Firstly, my name is Amit Arji. I'm the Director of Sales at Ixola. We are an e-retail strategy and a consulting firm. And I look after the sales and solutions for my company. And thank you so much for taking out the time and making it for the event. So I sincerely hope that we make your time worthwhile here by sharing some ideas on hyperlocal marketing. So actually, I would like to start off by sharing something which will interest all the cricket lovers in the room. So not that the cricket fans will not enjoy it, the other people will not enjoy it, but the cricket fans will be able to relate to it. So hyperlocal as a term is fairly new. You know, people are still experimenting with it. And last year, during the IPL season, Tata Sky experimented with hyperlocal marketing. So what they did is they came up with an ad campaign which they called 8 p.m. match versus 8 p.m. traffic. And as the name suggests, maybe most of you will be able to relate to it. During the IPL season, all the cricket fans, we try to wind up our work early so that we can go home and watch the match. But many times our hopes are crashed because we get stuck in traffic, right? And when we get stuck in traffic, one of the things that we do is we pull out our mobile phones and start checking the scores. And we keep doing that till the time we reach home, right? So the folks at Tata Sky, clever folks, they saw this as a trend and found out an interesting opportunity to market their product, Tata Sky HT plus recording. So the interesting thing is that most of the people that they targeted during this ad campaign, they were the educated population, already using internet, into sports, checking out mobile scores. So they already knew about the product, but never had an inherent need to own the product. And that's exactly what the ad campaign succeeded in doing. So what they did is they targeted 4 cities, and they geofenced the high traffic locations during a period of 29 days because that's when the IPL was going on. And they geofenced the high traffic zones between the time bands 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And they ran banner ads on all popular sports websites for people who were checking the scores on, right? And the ads would read something like, "Are you missing the match because of traffic?" And there would be another ad which would go something like, "Own a Tata Sky HT to record the match and watch it when you get home." This simple ad, this simple idea resonated so well between this limited focus group that in spite of being such a small campaign, they ended up getting 3 lakh clicks or 3 lakh visits to their mobile website, resulted in 66,000 calls to their customer center. And at the end of these 29 days, they had sold 2,500 devices, right? So, and this happened just last year. And this campaign became hugely popular, won a lot of critical acclaim in the advertising community. And this is actually one of the many examples and many applications of hyperlocal marketing that I wish to discuss in today's session. And as Samar said, we would want this session to be as interactive as possible. So at any time you find you have any questions or suggestions, please raise your hand and feel free to shoot. So now that we know that what we can expect from this session, so let's start off by defining hyperlocal marketing. So as the name suggests, hyperlocal marketing is a term used to describe digital marketing, which is meant to target a very specific location or a very specific geography on a map. So in very simple words, hyperlocal marketing is nothing but marketing to a specific community. So as Samar in his keynote, he mentioned that internet is about globalization. So it's about bringing all the people together and connecting them. But this era and this world also calls for advertising based on what my community is or showing me relevant messages based on my location. So mobile plays a huge role in hyperlocal marketing. So most recently and very specifically, hyperlocal marketing is done specifically through mobile devices. At least that's the first consumer interaction that you have with, that's the first touch point with your consumers. And post that, you can actually, record store cookies in his browsers, or in the case of mobiles, the cookies don't work, so you can actually save his device ID for future retargeting. But in the recent times, it's actually the hyperlocal marketing is working using mobile. So is it just another buzzword? There are so many buzzwords that keep coming in our industry. there was big data, and now most recently it is mobile, and there are so many. The ones that I'm saying have like specific applications, but there are so many buzzwords that we have come across in our experience, which catch a lot of attention and hype at first. They get written about in various blogs. They get talked about at trade shows and conferences, but they fade off till we catch another buzzword. So is this just another buzzword, or is it here to stay? Honestly speaking, yes, it is a buzzword. It is catching a lot of attention. However, this, as surprising as it may seem, this is one of the most ancient and oldest techniques used in the field of marketing. So you guys may not know it, but all of you guys are already doing hyperlocal marketing in one way or the other. In fact, hyperlocal marketing is so dated that it came even before the invention of technologies like radio or television or even print for that matter. So it dates back to even 2,000 years ago. We've been doing that for a very long time. And, so can you guys tell me what was the first ever hyperlocal marketing tool according to you? Anyone? So, if guys from Ixla can also answer. You read my PPT. Okay, anyways, yeah. So the first ever hyperlocal marketing tool was, in fact, the human voice. So before these technologies actually got invented, people were using their voice to market. So merchants, there were hawkers and there were stalls where they were actually shout out to appeal to the local community and invite them to visit or see the products that they had to sell. So before radio and television, hawkers actually or merchants actually relied on the human voice to market their products. So that was actually the first ever hyperlocal marketing tool. I mean, how much more hyperlocal can you get? Imagine a bunch of a bunch of ladies or aunties talking about your neighbors or talking about religion, which is still taught thousands of years ago, which started, and talking about products and sales. How much more hyperlocal can you get than that? Now, obviously, there is only so loud that a person can shout, and only so long that he can shout for. That it brought about the invention of print. So a man's desire to get heard and resonate that for a longer time was fulfilled by the invention of print advertisement. So people started relying on print to get local and even go beyond local. So that's when the print came in. Next was billboards. So we already know this medium. We come across them. In fact, we are bombarded with these all over the places. So then came the invention of billboards, where people could mass advertise in their local community. And then came modern technology. That doesn't look so modern, but when it was invented, it did seem modern. So then came the radio and television, which changed the advertising in a big way. So the companies only the companies with large advertising budgets could actually use forums to market nationwide, to promote their product on a national basis. But then again, very soon they realized that there were companies who could not afford it or were seeking affordable mediums to advertise their product. And there were some companies who could afford it but never had the need to go national, right? So that came about, or that brought about the invention of local community newspapers, local TV channels, local radio channels, local radio stations. So many radio stations that we listen to today are meant specifically for Mumbai. So that was again local within that community. And today we have mobile phones, Wi-Fi devices, and GPS-enabled phones to do the same thing. So hyperlocal marketing has existed ever since. It's just that the technology that we have been using and the tools that we are using has changed over time. And if you see in each of these examples, there was a difference, right? All these methods that we showed to you before introducing GPS, because we can even consider browsers in this, but we did not, web browsers. Because there's a difference between local and hyperlocal, right? So local would mean something like targeting a region or a geography like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore. Whereas hyperlocal would mean going as specific as, I want to target all the residents staying in the third cross lane of Lokhandwala Andheri. Or I want to go to, I want to target all the people dining at the restaurants on Waterfield Road in Bandra. So hyperlocal gives you the ability to go that specific and go at that granular level. So now that we know that, it may be a buzzword, it may not be a buzzword, but this is again a very interesting technology that has, changed the mindsets of consumers, that has changed the mindsets of a lot of businesses. And, I've just shortlisted or handpicked a few experiments or applications where this is already being used in a big way. And, so some of which, include real estate. And this is like the most obvious one. What realtors actually realized is when they were actually segregating or analyzing their customer data basis of a specific project, they saw that most of these customers happen to coming from a specific neighborhood or a set of neighborhoods. So whenever you're actually launching a project which is meant to be first homes for customers, it's actually people staying in the nearby vicinity buying that project. So if you're actually launching a project in Mumbai, a major chunk of your users will again be from Mumbai. And if you go further level down, it will be from specific locations, depending on the project size, depending on what the type of home is. Is it meant to be first home? Is it meant to be vacation homes, etc., etc. So real estate is using it in a very interesting manner. In fact, I don't know how many of you guys have actually specific campaigns for targeting the NRI audience. So as of today, it's gaining a lot of interest, but still we have seen that in our experience, the clients working with us in some projects, the valuation or the percentage of units sold to NRI audiences as high as like 10 to 15%. So it cannot be ignored. And what people are doing is, because they're coming up with properties which are focused for the NRI audiences. So when they're doing that and they're going after, going global, it's again about identifying those neighborhoods in whatever states or in whatever countries you're going after. It's about identifying the neighborhoods which has the highest number of NRI population or which has the highest number of Indian population, right? And today that technology allows you to do that. So if I were to go ahead and launch a project in south of India, I would probably go to the Middle East because that's concentrated with people who have their hometowns in South Mumbai. Whereas if I'm going to something like New Jersey, all you realtors have like a lot of shows happening over there. They would show specific interest in projects in like all over Mumbai, Chennai, etc. And there is a town in New Jersey called Edison, which has like a huge amount of NRI population. And if you have this technology available at your hand, realtors have already started to experiment and are seeing like promising results by whenever they're going outside or to market to a specific audience, they're going after these specific geofences which has the maximum Indian population. The next one is education. So this has like huge implications. There are already lots of stories about successful campaigns which people have started. So when I say education, I am not referring to schools and campuses. I'm actually referring to the training centers or there are so many classes or there are so many courses. India itself has become like, thousands of crores worth of business just in the classes, So teachers are not sufficient to, teach us. So we resort to these classes. Now, what these people are experimenting with is they are targeting all the campuses at the time of the admission and during the start of the semester to help them get through their course by signing up with their classes, right? So this is again, imagine this, as of today, we talk about, so many visitors coming on our website and then we are happy if we get like a 1 or 2% conversion rate. By doing this, two things are going to happen. Your cost per lead is going to shoot up, okay? But on the upside, a significant percent of them will end up converting because you're only appealing to the ones who are like very specific, who are like your specific audiences. So that's going to happen, and then finally you will end up saving a lot of time for your sales personnel because they'll not have to end up, waste time in qualifying the leads. They'll not have to waste time on the cold leads, and they're only getting the leads which are hot. The next one is retail. In most of the industries, retail is again one of the early adopters of this technology, and in the later half. Or in the second half of today's session, we are actually going to have a customer panel where we're going to discuss a couple of retailers using this application in a very interesting way. So a lot of times retailers are finding themselves with so many stores and so many outlets which are scattered all over the country. And one of the challenges that they face is in the terms of the utilization of, because they have a seat capacity or they have a capacity to onboard, or give away packages. So I'm talking about services retail, health and fitness players or people who are giving these fitness packages. So they have a capacity, each center has a capacity to onboard these resources, and they're using hyperlocal marketing very smartly to manage the resource utilization. So instead of flooding with TV campaigns and print ads, if one of my center is performing lower than expected, then I'm going to go local. I'm going to go after hyperlocal marketing and promote the services which are specific to that location and which are, promoting that center again, right? So that's again one of the interesting applications that we saw. And I'm not going to reveal numbers because that will spoil the fun of the second session. But in the second session, we also plan on discussing what kind of budgets that they spent on these campaigns and what are the results they got versus where they were before. Yeah, trade shows and events. This is getting like a lot of. This is a very controversial topic because especially the trade shows and the conference are not liking this. It's their bread and butter. They actually make so many people exhibit. They take an exhibition fees. They take a booth fees from you to actually meet with relevant people in the industry. Now, what people are doing is they're actually using hyperlocal marketing to not even attend a trade show at all. So they know the dates on which a conference center is going to host a specific event, and they're targeting all the mobile devices who are going to attend that trade show and save their device IDs for future retargeting. Right? So this is actually getting a lot of controversy. People are using this to, manage their booth traffic. We are actually going to have House of Irandani between us, and they went for a trade show in States last month, and they're going to discuss one interesting campaign with you. And I'll leave that for the second half of the session on how they actually utilize this tactic to make their trade show very successful. So, we just talked about like so many of these applications which has become possible because of hyperlocal targeting. But let's see it in action. So if you were a marketer or you are a stakeholder in your business, and if you were to go ahead and leverage hyperlocal marketing, how do you go about setting it up? What are the actual tactics? So we'll not actually show you setting up Google campaigns, but conceptually we'll show you how it works. So basically, again, we have taken the example of real estate. The reason we chose real estate is because, when we started sending the invites, we saw that a lot of people from the real estate world showed interest in this. And a lot of people who decided attending are also from the realty community. So what we did is, this is actually a real life example. So one of the top realty players, the worth is like over 2,000 crores. They wanted to generate leads for an affordable luxury project. They define affordable luxury for anything, for a unit price which is like 1.8 to 2.5 crores. That was the definition. And this property was meant to be first homes for their consumers, for all their customers. And what they did is they were looking to target customers looking for an upgrade. Okay, so for example, if this property was in Andheri East, they targeted all the locations or all the suburbs starting from Borivali to Andheri, okay, who are looking for an upgrade. And they also started targeting all the companies which fall under a 5-kilometer radius. And so there are some pretty big companies that will fall under this radius, right? So they started targeting all the companies who fall in that radius and started targeting their employees. And I'll tell you how they did that. So the step one was basically, as all agencies do, they want to understand the project. They want to understand what is it that we are trying to sell. So this was the range. It was affordable luxury, 1.86 to 2.4 CR was the unit price of each flat. Income group was INR 25 lakhs to 40 lakhs per annum. So the reason they gave us this income group, their explanation was because a lot of these insights we get from our clients, they've been selling this for so long, so they know what their customer bracket is. So they actually told us that, anything below 25 lakhs will not be able to afford the EMI. Anything above 40 lakhs will be looking for more premium properties. So their ideal customer profile was this, age group between 35 to 55. We went about, defining many sample personas, and this is one sample persona with their online browsing behavior, So you can actually see this guy, which we've taken, he's a guy in the finance industry. This is his typical browsing habits. These are the websites that he visits. Because we've seen that in the recent times, okay, search is one important medium to get your traffic, but a lot of this, sorry? Okay, yeah. So a lot of these times what's happening is, display is working really well. And in the contextual world, in the web world, when I refer to context, context would something refer as the kind of websites that he's referring says something about him. But in the hyperlocal world, a context is the neighborhood that he stays in says a lot about him, right? Stays a lot about him in the terms of literacy, stays a lot about him in the terms of statistics like average income bracket, says something about the educations and malls in that region. So that's what hyperlocal has actually brought to us. So by mapping down the behavior of a person, you can then decide, okay, during his regular days, he's checking his email these many times. And during his regular days, he's taking breaks in the office to check out his personal emails or read some letters. These are his popular websites, Economic Times, Times of India. He's a fitness conscious guy, and Sunday is probably the right time to catch him when he's browsing through these websites. So that's the whole objective of defining target personas. We have like several of these defined for this project. We've just highlighted one over here. The step 2 will be going about defining geofences. So just before that, I was taking an example of a property in Andheri East. It's a hypothetical example. But say, for example, I have a property in Andheri East somewhere close to the highway. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target all the suburbs from Borivali to Andheri. Okay. And go after all the properties who are looking, or go after all the customers who are possibly looking for an upgrade. That's going to be my one customer segment. The second customer segment, which worked phenomenally well for this project, was drawing a 5 or a 7 kilometer radius, okay, identifying all the companies that fall in that designation, fall under that company. Now, in this example that I just used, imagine this. If this property is in Andheri East, if you draw a 5 kilometer radius, the companies that will actually fall under is eBay, HUL, Procter & Gamble, Ixola will fall in that radius. And there are several many. There is Reliance Capital, there is Zenith and View. So we actually got the list of these companies, and then we went on Glassdoor. So how many of you guys actually use Glassdoor for employee hiring or going to? Okay. So Glassdoor, for those of you guys who do not use it, Glassdoor is basically a tool used for benchmarking salaries. So it's a tool for employees. Whenever they join us, they actually see our reviews. So it's more like LinkedIn for employees, or it's more like a review mouth shut for employees to check what people are saying about their employers. Before joining them, they're actually going to see the ratings of them. Do they pay on time? What are the growth opportunities, etc., etc. And they also do benchmarking of salaries. Right? That's one important segment. So if you go on Glassdoor, if you have a premium account, they'll be able to tell you that in a specific company like HUL, these designations will get an income bracket of so-and-so. Once we have these designations, we can actually run a very targeted LinkedIn campaign. Now, please note, LinkedIn campaigns are much more expensive. So you can expect anything to like 150 rupees to 250 rupees a click. And we did end up spending that tremendous amount, but the results were phenomenal because we went after the audience and we came up with campaigns which will actually resonate with them. Which means, people actually travel so much because of the traffic, the increasing problems of traffic. And people who are already in a certain income bracket will value time more than others. So we started with ad campaigns, which were something like, are you wasting your time getting stuck in traffic? Take a home nearby your office. And these are executives and officials who were staying in the company for several years, so they're likely to stick around. And then we targeted those specific, designations on LinkedIn using the tools that I just mentioned. Step 3 was actually, obviously setting up your Google campaigns, setting up your Facebook campaigns. Now, obviously, I wouldn't know. I can actually, using Google, I can, filter them by their results or by their, interest that they're taking in. But in the case of Facebook, the income bracket or that information is not available to you. So you can actually, in the case of Facebook, you can filter it by things like, their age group that they belong in. So, you get only the serious audience, that's one. Second is obviously the interest, but on Facebook, generally people tend to have like too many interests. One thing that worked very well for us is check-ins. So depending on where these guys are checking in, you can actually estimate, how much budget does he have for his leisure activities. And then you can estimate, okay, if he's going at such places, he should be able to afford my property. Okay. Unless he's making other people pay always. Okay, so step 4 was actually remarketing. One of the most important step in the entire process was remarketing. And for us to be able to do that in any industry, it's very important that you identify or actually map down the sales process in a lead generation environment. So when you actually map down the sales process in a lead generation environment, okay, this is something very similar that you can expect, that you have marketing mediums, which could be PR, radio, television, could be digital, and these are where all the leads are flowing in. Okay, all the marketers tend to focus on the first portion, on the CPL, the impressions they're getting, etc., etc. After that, there are droppages happening at each stage, right? So you have pre-sales, okay, which has become more tied by the invention of simple technology like auto SMS, auto emailers, you sending automatic e-brochures about the project, calling them, qualifying them. So there is a budget and a client matching that you do after calling him. You see if this client can meet your requirements, so you qualify them, and then you schedule the visits for the sales rep. And when you do that, if you have like an integration with the calendars of your sales reps, you can do that more efficiently, which these guys will discuss. And then comes the sales process, which is site visit, shortlist, and follow-up. This is actually what is happening. Then there is purchase, and then there's nurturing, where you enroll them in a referral program, newsletter subscriptions, and so on and so forth. So once you've actually identified this, depending on where he's dropping off, all this data is going to get fed in to an engine, to a remarketing engine, which will then display custom messages to them. So instead of having like generic messages to each and every one of these guys, you know that what property has he inquired in. You know that if he's inquired in a specific project, what stage has he dropped on. So to give you an example, if somebody's actually dropping off on a lot of these guys, we've seen that we filter them down by interest. So a lot of these times you will see visitors coming on the site. I'll just show you the next slide. So you get like, this is an average campaign. We have rounded off the figures. If you see, if you get like 2 million impressions on a site, and these are visitors who end up filling the lead, or these are visitors who click on your ad. So this is your CTR, right? How many people end up clicking on your ad? So we're just going to filter them by the visitors who are spending more than 2 minutes on your website. Because if they're spending more than 2 minutes or 120 seconds on your site, inquiring about the project details, did they actually go on the page with the project sitemap? Okay. If they did, they're potentially interested customers. And in spite of that, we get like 1,600 dropouts. Okay. No matter how beautiful our site is, no matter how small the lead form is, we don't get that. So even in so this is the scenario that we encounter, and what we see is that somebody who's actually dropping off at this stage, we'll actually show him a message, or whenever we retarget him, we'll actually show the image of that specific property that he was viewing, and saying that schedule an appointment today. And somebody who actually drops off after scheduling the appointment, I'm going to send him available only for this time. So because he missed his appointment, he agreed to come, but he missed his appointment. So there are dropouts at those stages as well, right? So yeah, sure. So basically, if you see, there are 1,800 leads visitors that ended up spending more than 2 minutes. Okay, so if you're filling a lead form, you're definitely amongst these that you spend more than 2 minutes. Yes, they say that they would be interested to know more about the property. So it's a simple 4-field form or something like that, and that's what they fill. So people have a serious aversion towards filling forms. I don't know how many of you guys actually filled the form on our site. Most of you confirmed on email or phone calls. So people have serious aversions, and Samar and Neerav are going to discuss some interesting ways which will blame us for not implementing on our event site. But they're going to show you some interesting ways how you can get through or get past the aversion of filling forms. To move on, so that question is clear, right, Abdul? Okay, so how do you focus on leads who do not visit the site? So basically, as I said, you will actually run campaigns creating that urgency to visit or schedule the appointment now. So I think this is how you'll go about configuring the campaign. Okay, this is a very high-level conceptual note on what are the possibilities for hyperlocal marketing in each of these areas. And I'm going to actually conclude my session here, and we'll be open for question and answers after that. But before we do that, one very important thing to note here is, using this, how important, I would like to emphasize on the bit, how important is it to use this data smartly or wisely. So I remember this friend of mine. Back then he was working with. I don't know how many can you relate to this, but when Facebook actually launched their sponsored post in the beginning, I found that to be a little misleading at first, because I was used to seeing a lot of girls purchasing products and then sharing it on FB, but I never saw it coming out as a sponsored post later on. So I saw this feed on my, I saw this post on my Facebook feed, which had the name of this friend of mine, who's generally into, he's a brand conscious guy, will buy the expensive stuff, big show off, annoyingly. And I had a Yepme shoe with a price tag of $199. And I was like, that's so unusual of him. And then I forgot about it. But then during that week, I saw that post 4 times on my Facebook feed. And again, with different products, but each time with the price tag of like $199 or $299. And we were supposed to meet in the coming weekend. And when we did, I obviously brought it up. हमको तो बहाने चाहिए एक दूसरे खींचने के लिए. So we brought it up, and I started, and all the friends started making fun of him. We congratulated him on becoming the proud owner of 4 shoes, 199 rupees each. So that kind of annoyed him, and that's when we realized that he had actually not bought those shoes, but he had just happened to like the Yepme page, and the immediate thing that he do after that is dislike the Yepme page the next day. So although he did tell us that he didn't buy those shoes, that didn't stop us from making fun of him the whole night. But yeah, and another interesting example, if you see, is when you're searching for places to eat on Zomato. I was doing that, and it happened to show me a place in the nearby location, in the nearby vicinity, which I had liked 1 year ago, but I'd completely forgotten about it. So it used the same thing, right? It used my location information. My GPS was on, so it used my location information. It used my past, it used my past behavioral data, and gave me a result which delighted me. So it's actually up to the marketeers and the stakeholders to step into the consumer's shoes and to use this data, wisely. So you can either end up offending the customers, or it's up to you to, delight the customers. So with that note, I'm going to end my session here. Thank you so much. You've been a great audience. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So it will not work. In fact, interesting thing that you mentioned. Sir, your name is? Paul. Okay. So Paul, what will happen in this case is, in fact, you should know that Facebook has not launched marketing. No, I'm feeling that I'm not. You're not on Facebook. Which is being done by today's generation. Yeah. See, almost every youngster of below or 22. Okay. So it is difficult to catch up. Absolutely. So to answer your question, firstly, to add to that, there are still hyperlocal marketing. Even if you want to do it, it's still very tricky in countries like India, because the maps are not mapped that efficiently as in developed countries like UK and US. So it's still that difficult to do it. And if you see, they're starting to prompt you to enter more information. Like it will actually ask you to bookmark your home, to bookmark your office, so that it collects this information about you, so that even if you don't have the GPS on, they pull this information. That's one. Secondly, sir, if you saw the example, Paul, if you saw the example that we gave over there, which was 2. Firstly, you geofence and target all the suburbs between a specific location, and then you go about finding out what are the people working in a specific location, what are their designations, and where do they work. Now, in that case, I don't need GPS, right? So there are smart ways of getting past that GPS thing as well. But obviously, with the invention of GPS, you'll be able to do much more targeted advertisement. So there are ways. In fact, in India, you cannot do that. Even if you have the GPS on, you cannot do it on Facebook, right? We feel so happy about Facebook. This is a separate thing, but we feel so happy about Facebook that it is offering me, things like check-ins. It's again to collect what places are you visiting, what are your areas of interest, and then tomorrow, if you don't have GPS on, I still know what your areas of interest are. So I can actually qualify you in that packet. Right? Sure, Fanindra. Okay. Fair question. So to answer your first question, Fanindra, is hyperlocal marketing more effective than other mediums of marketing? I would say it depends on the context. I would say it depends on the context. So basically, when I'm targeting a user on a web-based platform or on his Facebook or on his Google, context to me means things like his behavioral pattern. So if he's actually going on Economic Times and Money Control, I know he's a guy with some investments, right? So that's the context that I'm interested in. The income bracket, his interest segments. So if I were a banking industry, a banking segment, I'm present all over, right? You can actually book. There's no need of hyperlocal marketing. I can actually book insurance policies on the go. So I'll be interested in web-based form of marketing where I can actually get this context about you. That's one. Second is if I'm someone else for whom the context like the neighborhood area matters, or I'm someone for whom what matters is are there any malls in that area. So we were speaking with Oberoi Mall, and they told us that they get like 3 lakh footfalls every year, and 96% of them are repeat customers because you tend to go in a mall. Each one of you will be going to one specific mall over and over again to watch your movies because that's in your vicinity. So somebody who's promoting a retail outlet inside a mall would prefer that hyperlocal marketing over the other forms of marketing. So it really depends on the context or on the objective of your marketing campaign. So that's the answer to the first question. And the second one is, yes, Fanendra, there are many clients apart from Tata Sky experimenting on this. So Tata Sky itself, which is an Indian firm, did this last year in 2013. So the companies abroad are already steps ahead of implementing this. And during the later half of the session, we have House of Irandani and Dr. Batra sharing their case studies on how they've leveraged these techniques.
Because India has 500 million phones, which is 2 times the population potentially of US. So we have 2 times the phones than the population of the country and 25 times the population of Australia. So the context of hyperlocal gets potentially driven by mobility is one part of it. And we see that that's a big trend which will come through. The second one is we're very, very hopeful of the new launch of Android One, where a mobile-enabled phone would be available at 5 to 6,000 rupees. So this could be a very, very interesting development in the direction of hyperlocal. To just add one more point to Paul's point, one of the big things which is socially restricting this is that as Indians, we're not very used to sharing. We are very used to criticizing, but we're not used to sharing. And I speak from a hat of an ex-eBayite. When we used to run eBay, I was part of eBay as a business. If the product was not delivered properly, you will get a rating immediately. And if it was delivered within 5 minutes, he will not bother to say you did a great job. So an interesting thing is that Indian sharing will come from a more criticizing kind of a system. But I see that the youth is very different. And that 25 to 35 bracket, I think people are extremely comfortable sharing. So if you share, and if you have a mobility as a device, which is working at such a cheap price, the hyperlocal comes into play. It can really scale up in that respect. Yes.
I agree. So basically, hyperlocal marketing is more relevant when you have a physical or an offline aspect to it. So usually you will use hyperlocal marketing when you're present physically somewhere, and use hyperlocal marketing to influence footfalls over there. If you actually YouTube, I've not included the controversial applications of it, where people have started to target their competition outlets and started placing offers. So there was a shoe company which was a shoe retailer. Okay, it came up with an application to target all the unique brand outlets. So obviously a multi-brand retailer can offer more discounts, whereas a exclusive brand outlet like a Nike or a Reebok showroom would focus on quality and experience and all of that. So they get that quality and the experience, and they get messages on their phone saying that come at our store and avail the same thing at 25% discount. There was another guy who said 100% discount. I don't know whether it was a spoof video, but it said 100% discount, and it will start reducing, the discount percentage will start reducing till the time you reach my store. So every 15 seconds it will go by, like it will become 99, 98. So they were running to the other store so that they reach on time and say, okay, I avail this much discount.
In fact, Pranitya, this industry is just starting to pick off, but we see huge amount of use cases. So I think Amit mentioned about Oberoi Mall. So it's a pretty large mall, and one of the objectives they were meeting was that can you target a guy within my mall? So potentially, if the person is walking from Home Central to a home center, which are two absolutely different places, they should be aware that now he or she is in this aisle, and this is what we're going to market it. So they're getting into that last level and trying to figure out that, and the context is so good because you know that that person is crossing this aisle and should be marketed this because the store is right in front of him. So
indoor navigation.
yeah. Okay. Sure.
Any more questions, guys? Yeah, sure. People behind cannot hear.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
So we have millions of visitors every day, and we have very strong CRM to record their data, what kind of preferences they have, what they did last time. So we are using some magnifying techniques to target a particular focus group of customers, but we are not really very geo-centric. So I don't know whether it can help us collaborating these geographical locations in online platform and help us.
Sure. So I hope everyone got his question. So he's from Yatra, and his question is that will online platforms like a travel website have any application or use of hyperlocal marketing, or can that impact their style of marketing? So in this case, it's still conceptual because people in the similar industry are trying this out. But what they're doing is this is going to be driven from analytics and big data, which means when you're actually doing any sort of campaigns, you're going to analyze your current customers group and see that your campaign, when you were promoting an outing in Lonavala, was most successful or was most purchased by Mumbaikars or by Mumbaikars within this region. If you do that, then there are a lot of regional holidays. When I say regional holidays, which means we have certain holidays in our office that only people of that religion take, right? So if you have that and you have a neighborhood which takes off during that days and has a densely populated, so there are a lot of people who have a specific community focus, right? Only a specific religion is staying over there. So you can then start promoting on their regional holidays that specific location. So it will be driven from you first analyzing your current database, and seeing, okay, where the customers are coming from, how the campaign's performing. Is there a trend that I can pick on? And does that trend spike in interest in location? And that's when you can potentially use it.
Currently, we are targeting Mumbai.
Uh-huh.
Unable to reach to a particular location in Mumbai. Like if somebody is booking from Borivali
Okay.
and he is from this particular community,
Uh-huh.
we are unable to target that. So Mumbai to Lonavala is
Is very, yeah, would be a popular thing, I thought. Yeah.
Not the Bollywood or Andheri location.
Uh-huh.
Or a Parsi community and they are taking an off the Parsi view or something.
Yeah.
We are not doing that because we don't have that kind of data.
To add to your point, I have seen a use case where local Banya is trying to do this. So they're collaborating with Google very closely now. Uh, for everybody's information, all these Google and Facebook channels are not giving the last level check-in data to the marketers as of today. But as marketers go down to them and they understand, because they can make more money if they open this data to everybody. And the assumption is that people will share their check-ins and all that. So in case of local Banya, what their focus is that for Mumbai or for a particular locality where they're good, they need to understand what is the person's buying habits as far as groceries concerned. So now they're going ahead and trying to check in for the check-ins into a grocery store and trying to find answers and try geo-targeting on those guys. It could be. In your case, if you can get a data and a check-in data of I checked into a travel agent's office, and you know that I won't check into a travel agent's office for anything else, right? So if this data is available to you, you can do what the trade show guys are doing to everybody. So I think it's about going across to the channels, which is potentially Twitter, Facebook, Google, who collecting these data or Foursquare and getting that information as a purpose. So one is the purpose side of it. Other could be ethnicity. You know that people from Islam as a faith travel for Hajj at a particular period of time. That could be a target. And an interesting part of human race is that we do live in communities and we promote that. We've seen these two cases been done. So I'm watching what local Banya does on this, and it's a very, very interesting thing which they're trying. So what they're saying is we're converting a grocery shop buyer to a local Banya buyer, and you can't have a better option to do this.
Anything else? Okay, so thanks a lot, guys. You've been a wonderful audience. We are expecting few more people to join during the lunch time. So we're going to break for lunch. The lunch is on. Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. We have one more session and then we break for lunch. It's just that maybe I'm hungry. So, so we're going to have Nirav and Samar's session now, and then we'll break for lunch. Thank you so much, guys.